it really is changing the way that I organize my stories, the way I know what they are. I'm going to do a whole stream just on that, and I'll look at like how I catalog the submission and publishing history of each one, how I put each one on, how I put the photos on, how to use it for search. Encourage authors to start early so that they're cataloging their stories from the beginning and not 460 of them all at once, taking 3 months of your life to get it done. I think it's gonna have me do a better job of submitting stories. When you start, you don't really think like, oh, I can keep all my stories in my head. I know which ones I've written, and so it doesn't seem like a thing. And I kept it all on notebook paper, but I think there's a huge advantage to having them in one place. There's a huge advantage in having them uploaded somewhere where, even if you have a backup system like Carbonite or something like that, I have that on my computer. Having it where like no matter how badly a computer dies, every story is stored somewhere where you can get to it, I think is very reassuring. And I am thinking in terms of legacy. I don't plan on punching my card out too soon, but I do think that there's something to be said for like having everything in one place. If it wasn't for Brian Keene talking about it, it wouldn't even have crossed my mind. And frankly, at this point in my career, I could argue that what's the big deal? I'm not like a Stephen King level. The idea that like you want your stories to live beyond you, so like the further you go along, the more value there is there. And there's people that will want to read them one day, and people that care about you that probably want to see your work continued. So again, it was probably Brian Keene that got a lot of us thinking about it. If I went back to when I was still teaching school and could see my life now, I'd be blown away. Like the fact that I'm working full time as an author, I'm able to pay my bills. At one point, I was able to pay my bills mostly on time. Now I pretty much pay my bills on time with my writing money, so that's a step forward. But look, from that point, that guy that was still trying to just achieve anything with writing, if he could look forward and see where I am now, that would be making it. Like this would be the dream. And to be here now and realize, of course, there's still work that goes in. Like I have to keep working because just because I've made enough money to pay my bills this month doesn't mean anything for the months ahead. So it is constant work, but it doesn't hurt me to say, okay, well, at one point this was my dream, and that's great. I need to enjoy that as I try to make it more sustaining. There's this idea with some writers that the line between making it or not has to do with full time. I'm not sure it's a healthy line. Like I'm not sure people. It's good to have a dream and have that be what you're working toward. If you're never going to be happy until that happens, then that's going to be a problem, and it'll probably get in the way of making forward motion. But it's also good to see I can be successful and not get to that point, and I can I can advance myself considerably in this industry, and that not be the difference between success and failure, I think. I kind of ran against this wisdom in 2020 by accident. I had done a few things. One was I wrote all three books in a trilogy for a young adult fantasy series, and my plan was to put all three out at once. So I released that in 2020, and in my mind, I counted it as one release because all three books came out at once. But technically, I'd published three books. I had a time travel academy middle grades book that I was planning to put out in 2021, but the young adult series did so well that I went ahead and put out the first three books. I'd written all three. We're going to put them out at once in the following year, but I went ahead and put them out in 2020 because that had done well, so those did well. So in the end, I ended up with 10 books out because two of the releases were really three books all at once. So that was six books, but in my mind I was thinking of it as one release, and they all did pretty well. I think there was at the moment when the pandemic started, there were a few people looking for stuff to read, and I think I cashed in on that. So I kind of hit a wave of sales with that. Now I can't do 10 books every year. Some of that was stuff that was meant for a future year, and some of it was stuff that I'd written earlier and was releasing there. One of the upsides of the rapid release model is that idea of like when you're small time, and I don't mean that as an insult, but when you're small time, but you build a niche audience. So every book you sell has, every book you write is going to have a definite amount of sales because you have a certain number of people that are going to buy every book. And there's a few authors that a lot of the A-list people wouldn't even know that are making six figures each, and doing it by that model, that idea that they have a relatively small audience that's fiercely loyal, and every book they put out will sell. So to make that work for a living, they got to do that rapid release. And then of course other people are trying to catch on to that. So I guess traditional publishing moves away from it, and indie publishing historically has leaned into it a good bit.